Hi, my name is Rick Bloodworth. This is the Common Sense Christian Financial Channel, and today I want to look at a specific question that is essentially this: can you afford to buy a new car? Well, to begin with, in 2025, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the average salary for Americans is $61,984 a year, or about $4,200 a month after taxes. That's your take-home pay, and that $4,200 a month will be a significant figure for you to keep in mind as we look at the following examples that we're going to have as far as buying a new car or leasing a car. Anyway, if you're a Christian and you've determined I'm going to make sure that I give of my first fruits to God every month, let's just take a figure of 10%. I realize that's kind of arbitrary. It's not required in the New Testament times. Tithing was an Old Testament thing, but we are required to give regularly, cheerfully, and in keeping with our income. So you just figure out what that is for your situation. That'll be between you and God. But let's just use a 10% figure and say you've got about $3,800 remaining now for all of your bills after taxes and after your giving. The lender's going to be looking at this $4,200 figure, your after-tax take-home pay. And so this is going to be the basis that we're going to be looking at. But keep in mind that if you're giving, you want to have that as your figure that helps you for your guidelines. There's some very important things for us to understand. Insurance in America right now, according to Forbes, the average full coverage insurance policy is going to run you about $170 a month. Compare that to just liability. If you don't have a loan, if you have an older car that you don't have to have full coverage on, that's going to be much closer to $50 or $60 a month for that car. It might even be lower if you have very few vehicles, might be a little higher if you have a lot of drivers and a lot of vehicles. But this difference of $110 a month is very real between what you'll have to pay if you get a loan and if you don't get a loan. So keep that savings in mind as well. And then there's another thing that we want to remember, and that's lending standards. In America, the average lending standards for percentages of your take-home pay are this. Most lenders will not lend you a whole lot more than 28% of your total take-home pay for a mortgage. And on $4,200, that's going to be about $1,176 a month. Why is that important? Because lending standards in America right now also are such that those lenders are only going to allow you to have 36% of your after-tax pay for all loans. And that doesn't just include your mortgage, but it also includes your student loans, your credit card loans, any revolving credit that you may pay on a monthly basis, and any car payments you have. Why is that significant? Well, if you have a mortgage that's within these guidelines, you make $4,200 a month and your mortgage payment is about $1,176 a month. In order to keep within the standard for all the rest of your loans, you're only going to have $336 a month for those loans: student loans, credit card loans, commercial loans, and automobile loans. $336 a month. Well, that's going to make, hopefully, a big impact now on your decision as to whether to buy a new car, assuming you haven't already made that particular commitment. Many of you have. Most of us in our lifetimes have made that decision, and most of us have come to regret it pretty quickly for those of us who have bought new cars. Some people are in a cycle where they're so deep underwater on their new car payments that they feel bound to continuing to keep on buying new cars and keep on buying it. And by doing so, they essentially become debt slaves. One of the things that I want to emphasize on this channel is this. We want to find out how we can remove ourselves from the roles of the debt slaves in order that we can be servants of just one master, God. The Bible tells us very clearly that the borrower is slave to the lender. And I believe there's a lot of us, myself included at times in the past, and my wife along with me, have found that this proverb is quite true. When you borrow too much, you become a slave until you pay that back. And it's not a very pleasant situation. Some of you may find yourselves in that very situation right now. What we want to talk about at the present is for those who have not already made that commitment for the new car loan. For those who have, we'll talk about that in a moment as well. But in America, and these figures are taken from several sources. NerdWallet, I find, is a pretty good source. Despite its name, usbankrates.com is another good source. They tend to rely on other sources such as Experian, the credit union, for some of their data. And so the data we're going to be looking at is very much up to date, and it is very accurate. And so in America, the average new car loan is going to cost you $742 a month. Now that's before any insurance, any gas expenses, anything like that. $742 a month just for that new car payment every month. And the average term is 68 months. That's nearly 6 years worth of obligation when you sign that dotted line on that new car loan. Something to keep in mind. Even for a nice used car, something that maybe is just 3-5 years old, they're still going to loan to you on a 68-month basis. And the average cost of that new loan per month for a used car, a nice one, but a used car, is $525 a month. Well, at this point, a lot of people will say, well, I'm not going to do that, then I'm going to lease. And the lease will get you a shorter term, average about 36 months. That's true. But still, your payment's going to be much closer to $600 a month, $595 if you have the average lease. In addition to that, there are restrictions on that lease. Nearly every single 3-year lease, such as the one we're looking at, is going to have a limit for you of 1,000 miles a month. And so that means when you turn that car back in 36 months, it better not have more than 36,000 miles on that odometer, or they're going to charge you a significant penalty. So, again, let's look at these figures. $742 a month, 68 months for a new car on average, $595 a month, 36 months for a lease car on average, $525 a month, 68 months on average for a loan for a nice used car. Well, in each instance for these, they're going to require you to get full coverage insurance. So you add that $170 a month. And again, this is from Forbes, pretty accurate on this. Your total payment and insurance every month for a new car is going to be $912 a month. For a lease car, $765 a month. And for a used car, much closer to $700 a month. That's what your out-of-pocket is going to be. On top of that, you're still going to have to pay your gas payments on that. And so you need to really be thinking about all these things, because I believe if you will really study budgeting and if you will look at budgets that work, you're going to find that total expenses for all of your automobiles, if you have 1, 2, 3, however many, your total monthly allotment should be closer to 15% of your take-home pay. And that's for any payments, that's for any insurance, that's for any gas, that's for any repairs. 15% of $4,200 is just a little over $600 a month. And as you'll see, each one of these blows that budget out of the water very quickly. For a new car, 22% a month. A lease, 18%. Even a nice used car, 16.5%. And these are before your fuel payments. Now, here's the argument that a lot of people will make. And it's a very common argument. It's one that the new car salesman will really try to make sure is embedded deep within your mind. And that's this. For a new car, you're not going to have any repairs. This car is going to be under warranty. If you have problems, you just bring it back in. We'll take care of it for free. That's true enough. But let's just suppose this. Let's say you have a used car, and that used car takes $200 a month in average repairs for the year. That's a lot of money. And then maybe it even takes another $50 a month in fuel costs over what you'd be paying for the increased fuel efficiency of a new car. And so you might be looking at that and thinking, I'm saving $250 a month just by buying a new car. But you're forgetting you're paying $110 a month on average more for insurance. So that $250 savings is now $140 a month saving, and you haven't made your car payment yet. That new car is costing you about $600 a month greater than that used car. And even a good used car with a loan is going to be costing you about $350 a month. And so you're not saving anything by getting a new car. You're spending an awful lot of money extra. And then, again, 68 months. What happens if you and your wife, who can comfortably afford this car payment, all of a sudden have a baby? And what happens if, since you have 2 jobs, you got 2 new cars and you have a baby? What happens at that point? Mama going to be able to quit her job and stay home with the baby? And now all of a sudden your expenses are even more because you've got child care expenses. These things need to be thought about and taken into consideration. When you buy a new car, you really do obligate yourself for a very long period of time to a certain standard of living. And that standard of living, while it may seem a little bit higher to your neighbors because you're driving a nicer car, in reality, you know, when you sit down to pay those bills, is a much lower standard of living than you'd have had otherwise. Prudence dictates that we think about these things in advance. God's expectations for us are that we serve Him and serve Him alone. That's awfully hard to do when we find ourselves a slave to the lender because we've gotten ourselves in over our heads. And that's the second side of this video today. It's very brief, but this is something I want you to think about. If you're already in this situation, if you're already in over your head, up to your eyeballs in debt, you're drowning, what do? And the answer, I believe, is contained in what somebody told me years ago as the first rule of holes, and that's this: if you find yourself in a hole, you stop digging. If you're already in that hole, don't compound it by continuing to make bad decisions. Stop where you are right now. Prayerfully ask for God's guidance. Sit down and look at your budget honestly. If you're married, sit down with your spouse, and the two of you together look at your budget honestly and decide, do we want to live like this, or can we have something better, something that is more freeing, something that is more peaceful, something that's more conducive to a servant of God? I believe you're going to find the answer is yes. If you're in a big debt hole right now, I know you're going to find that answer is going to be yes. But what do? Well, stop digging, take a deep breath, look at your finances, and we'll start talking about some of the options that may be available to you if you're already in over your head. We'll do that in upcoming weeks, but for today, can you afford a new car? And the answer, sadly, for people in most situations is absolutely not. Do most people in most situations get a new car? And the answer is yes, they do. And most people are really living a subpar life because of that. A nice car looks nice, but it is nothing compared to just having an old beater, as Dave Ramsey would say, that allows you to sleep at night. That may be an occasional inconvenience for you, but which allows you to get the rest of your budget under control, and therefore the rest of your life under control as well. Well, that's the video for today. I hope it gives you something to think about, and hopefully maybe it'll answer some questions that you might have been having before you get into a situation that you wished later on that you hadn't done. Appreciate your tuning in.